One story, many angles.
Listen, I am telling you that
I don't agree. I don't.
Yeah, who the president?
No. You can't say that.
Politics. Where is good governance?
Everyone is a political animal.
I don't like politics.
But I love political voices.
On Political Voices, we talk politics. In a country of diverse interests, who gets what, when, and how is politics. And this is our business on Political Voices. Nigeria, a country of over 160 million people. Political Voices is gauging the temperature, setting the agenda. Political Voices, exclusively on Dream FM, 9 o'clock in the morning.
Good morning and welcome to Political Voices on 92.5 Enugu's Dream FM. Political Voices is a session of comments, interviews and analyses of trending political stories as they affect and shape the world around you. Today it's Thursday. It is the 23rd day of July 2020, and this morning our focus turns to COVID-19, opportunities for education and development in Nigeria. We'll take a look at the issues. But before we get to the discussion, there are matters arising from the political space. The Minister of Labour, Employment and Productivity on Wednesday rejected resolutions of both chambers of the National Assembly calling for the removal of the Minister of State, Festus Keyamo, from supervising recruitment of 774,000 Nigerians for the Special Public Works Program. The ministry's Deputy Director, Press and Public Relations, Mr. Charles Akpan, in an interview, said this in Abuja. The Senate and the House of Representatives had, at their separate sessions on Tuesday, asked the President, Muhammadu Buhari, to stop the recruitment of 774,000 Nigerians. A former Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice in Ondo State, Mr. Eitayo Jegede, has been elected the candidate for the People's Democratic Party in the October 10th governorship elections. In the state, Jegede defeated other contestants, having polled 888 votes, while the deputy governor of the state, Mr. Agbola Ajayi, polled 657 votes, and the PDP national vice chairman, Dr. Edi Olafeso, came third with 175 votes. Also, Dr. Bode Ayorinde scored 95 votes. Mr. Banji Okunomo polled 90 votes. Senator Bulawaji Kunlere got 33, Shola Ebisheni scored 29, and Godday Erewa polled 13 votes. The election was keenly contested among the 8 aspirants, and no fewer than 2,122 delegates from the 18 local government areas of the state participated in the election. Of course, the Enugu State Governor, Ifeanyi Uwani, was the returning officer for PDP in that particular election. Good looking out to them. And remember, we are having our social media transmissions. You can watch this program live on our YouTube channel at Dream TV Enugu. Remember to subscribe and turn on notification to catch our amazing live videos. And if you missed any edition of Political Voices, you can go to our YouTube channel, Dream TV Enugu, to catch that program. And we're also live on Facebook, 925 Dream FM. And you can send us a WhatsApp message on 0902 0020 925. Stay with us. Okay, the 3 months ago, we should say, started in the year, the Director General of the World Health Organization declared the outbreak of coronavirus COVID-19. That's on the 30th of January 2020. It was declared a public health emergency of international concern, the PHEIC. That's, of course, the Federal Minister of Education, in a circular dated March 19th, 2020, also granted an approval for the closure of all schools in Nigeria. The closure of the schools has affected close to 46 million students throughout the country. Could this be a blessing in disguise? Now, are there opportunities for education and development in Nigeria? We will find out in the next 50 minutes because I have been joined in the studio this morning by Professor Ufo Okeke Uzodike. He is the director of Afri Heritage Institute. Good morning to you, Prof. Good to see you again.
Good to see you. Thank you.
And also joining us in the studio is Chukwuma Ephraim Okenwa. He's Executive Director, Lead Network, and he's also a stakeholder in the education sector. You run a school?
Yeah, I do.
All right. So that sets the stage for our discussion. When you have a professor and a school proprietor in the studio, it sets the tone for the conversation. I'll start by asking you, Professor Ufo Okeke Uzodike, is it possible that have we done a proper SWOT analysis of the situation at hand in the education subsector that places stakeholders in a position to discuss positive developments in the middle of a pandemic?
Excellent question. I think the evidence is that we have not. I haven't seen any evidence that we've actually done this. And part of the argument really is that this needs to be happening. We need to see this happening in a fairly serious way. Before the pandemic, we already had a broken education system before the pandemic. With the pandemic, it was an opportunity. It's still an opportunity for stakeholders to actually begin the discussion. One of the critical things that must happen is that the discussion has to be on the table. Right now, it isn't. And the question is, why not? Why not? There are opportunities out there. One of the things that has actually become quite clear globally is that the current system of production and trading is very, very unequal, very skewed. What African countries must take note of is that there are plenty of opportunities actually out there. But the problem that we've got in the case of Nigeria and most African countries is that we are simply not even ready to take advantage. Why not? We must restructure our educational system, revamp them throughout the value chain, not just at the university level, throughout the value chain, so that we target certain kinds of human capital development, where we actually are bringing out certain kinds of, or certain qualities of students who graduate and who can now come out, whether it's at the high school level that they exit, we have a channel where we're going to put them. If it's at the university level, we have places that we can actually put them so that they can actually make contributions. Currently, education adds something like around 2% to the national GDP. It should be far higher than that. And so, for us who are sitting here looking, it's like a tragedy still unraveling. Nigeria already is one of the largest countries in the world with over 200 million people. We have some of the highest unemployment rates of any country in the world. We have some of the highest poverty rates of any country in the world, and we are doing nothing about this. Why not? That is at the heart of the problem.
All right then, Chukwuma Ephraim Okenwa, by merely talking about the problems we see, especially within this pandemic, has it really moved us in the direction of taking advantage of the opportunities this pandemic presents?
I think we probably have not spoken enough, because if you check the trajectory of change, it all begins with realizing that there is a need for change in the first place. Secondly, stakeholders should be able to sit down on the table. One of the greatest opportunities that this pandemic presented, like Prof identified, I think I can remember clearly in 2019 when the Minister of Education, Adamu, spoke about the need for declaring state of emergency in the educational sector. He identified the need for a complete overhaul and to revamp the system, being that it's very clear that the current educational structure and system we have in place, it's not meeting up with our need as a nation. It's been touted over time that education is the bedrock for national development, But when people are being schooled without getting educated, you know, they are entirely different things. The word education, from the root word educare, simply means to draw out. You don't go to school to fill people's mind. People go to school to be discovered, to be developed, and for their innate potentials to be rightfully deployed. But when we have a situation where people are just pushed into schools, right? And then we even train people like sometimes in courses where they don't have any space or any place within the nation. Like one of those courses, like where you have like courses like urban and regional planning, you understand? With several graduates, you know, graduating in their hundreds, you wonder, you know, how many places are still left for them to plan. Or like you visit maybe like the computer department, where in some cases, it's only in Nigeria, in some cases you see people learning computer without actually a computer. You understand? And then people are still doing courses like Fortran, Cobalt, you understand? Leaving aside like some other trendy courses. So when you look at it, a complete assessment, I've mentioned the fact that our educational structure at the moment has failed to meet up on the 3Ds, discover, develop, and deploy. And then number two also, it has not been able to like match that gap in terms of providing the kind of presence that the labor force at the moment requires. Because you know that the whites that delivered education, we actually came up with a system to help service like their own agenda, you understand? So now we've been able to find out that there is a deficit in terms of production. We need to do more in that ground. He's identified a deficit in trade, you understand? There's a lot more we can do in terms of patronizing, creating local content and engaging it. Why don't we school like young persons along that line? And then one of the ones also that is very painful, when we begin to hear like statistics like 4 out of every 5 graduates are unemployable. And then in most cases, young persons are blamed, leaving aside the institutions. But institutions are there, you understand, accredited to ensure that any person that will be endorsed by that institution should have all the requisite skill and all the requisite learning, and moreover, when you say in the certificate having fulfilled, you understand, you've proven yourself that you are worthy in character and in learning, you have hereby awarded this degree, and then the person leaves the school with a 2-1 and cannot even be able to like draft an application letter, you understand? So it's an indictment on the system, but nobody is blaming the system in most cases. So, you know, you see like young persons being blamed and all the rest, but I believe if any young person is not serious, then the school should not do what? Certify the person. So it's actually a time for us to be forced. And then when you also see like, you just happy, of course I know that ASU was on strike, you understand, you know, before now. But guess what, like some other higher institutions are doing in other countries? They are compelled to research. The world, it's in a crisis. We are part of the world. We can't just sit down comfortably and be waiting. Oh, when Singapore come up, when people have COVID-19 after 10 days, you understand, of recovery, they become, they become non-infectious. We just bring that one. So to the point that when we are drafting our infectious bill, we have to like get 1977 bill of, you understand, of Singapore. So what are the university dons doing? What are the stakeholders doing? Why don't you get into research? Why don't you contribute? Are you forbidding also to come up with solutions with what is bedeviling our world in the current moment? So you come to find out that it does appear that our education is just to fulfill all righteousness, but not to meet up with the need at the moment.
All right. Professor Ofoke Kilzodike, it does appear that the educational sector have their work cut out. Especially in many other countries, we see action. But here, considering our level of preparedness or unpreparedness, do you think there is something we should expect? Something that will be, can make someone say, wow, are we expecting anything from this system the way it is right now in Nigeria?
If you haven't put much in the system, why would you be expecting anything? We will not be getting anything because there isn't much in the system. Not in terms of research. There is that fund, which is supposed to fund research, but it's organized in a very chaotic sort of way across the board for most of these institutions that are actually getting the money. We're not even giving money to some institutions, institutions in the private sector, many of which are better organized actually currently than many of the public institutions. So when you have not actually been investing in a system, and when even the investments in question are puny, in terms, when you compare to the needs that are there, then you can't expect much. And so research in our institutions is really, really, really poor when you compare it with what's actually happening across the board. Now, the science people are actually doing well. They're doing much better than many in the non-science areas, arts and social sciences. But even there, they are able to do so largely because they tend to piggyback right on collaborations that they have with people outside of the country. And so it's not really innate in our system or to our system. So there is a problem there. If we can emulate what's happening in many, many other countries, including some countries in Africa, it's not actually, it's not all bare. Within the continent, there are some countries that are doing better, that are investing better. Even here in West Africa, countries like Ghana are doing better in this particular area than we are doing. Now, if we are to actually achieve if you look at the goals of our country, in terms of being a key player within the region, a basic expectation is that you actually invest in your education. We invest something like around 6% of our GDP, of our budget, to education, when many countries are actually investing, even Cameroon, countries nearby, are investing far more than we are doing. And the expectation is that we invest somewhere around 20-something%. But when we are putting 6, it's been going down over the past 3 or 4 years. We are actually basically creating the basis for disaster going forward.
All right, then. CEO, I'm sure you want to add something. I'll ask you a question.
Yeah.
You will respond together.
Yeah.
Looking at how Nigeria has handled the COVID-19 pandemic, it does appear that a lot of people are really interpreting what they see to mean that the politicians are driving the whole thing about fighting the pandemic. Shouldn't this be something left for the core professionals in the health sector, and of course those that are connected with research? Shouldn't we change the method of our approach to the fight against the pandemic? It looks like everything is reactionary instead of being proactive. Talk to us about what we need to see to actually start reaping the benefits presented, unquote, by this pandemic. Well, other countries seem to be exploring other avenues to get by. At what point can we start reaping those benefits?
Yeah, I think to reap the benefit of the opportunities that is presented by the pandemic, we must first realize that there is a need. The rest of the world is running. It is our own responsibility to ensure we catch up. You know the way the prof just made an illustration, you understand, about this whole thing. You invest less in education against recommendation by UNESCO, for which Nigeria is part of it, is a signatory. Some other nations are investing at least 26%. You invest only 6%. In your mind, education is not development. Development is maybe when you build roads, when you build maybe structures that people could see. But I always want to refer people to the Sustainable Development Goals of UN. When the likes of Fayoshe mentioned stomach infrastructure, some people were laughing, but it's also there. You have no poverty, no hunger, it's part of it, you understand? You talk about infrastructure, innovation, industry. You talk about quality education, the 4th goal, quality education. And UNESCO recommends 26%. When you invest first, you can now expect a return on investment. And in research, I want to differ with the prof in one regard, in the aspect of the science, with the following point, you understand? When he said we made lots of research, I'm sure you followed the news recently, when the guy in charge of the raw materials section in the Ministry of Science and Technology in charge of developing local content, they were asked all the budget that were being sent in for years, what did you achieve? And he said they were able to come up with a Kirishi machine after years. And then I also saw when in 2016, when the Minister of Science and Technology rolled out the ambitious plan of what his ministry will achieve by 2018. And what was that? Pencil, to start producing pencil in Nigeria. And I will tell you now, Oga Alex, that as we speak, the COVID-19 we talk about, the virus, has not been successfully isolated in Nigeria. I mean, like scientists say, oh, this is how it look like the shape we see. It's all the PCR reactions, you understand, where you just react and also, and there have been like concerns of even, okay, what if you get the right one? What if you be able to see, are you sure, you understand? Can you try it on some other thing? But then, as a nation that have interest in STEM and science, we should have been able also be concerned, you understand, to not just isolate it, but to trace pathology of like some acclaimed cases that, oh, these people die, because assessing death is also a scientific process, you understand? Be able to confirm, don't say, oh, the person died out of COVID-19 and maybe underlying infections also. We should be able to know what exactly killed this person. That is the essence of having institutions, you understand, in our nation. But I will tell you, compared with other nations, we've not been able to do all we need to do, and that is why we are not reaping the benefits as a nation. But then, this should have also forced us back to the table to begin to think, you understand? You know, I look at like maybe the way politicians, they have not before now given much attention to the health sector, you understand? You know, health and education, they are like twin brothers when you talk about human capital development, you understand? When you talk about human development index. But now, they are now compared as politicians to, you know, make use of maybe the health facilities available at the moment. You understand? This also should have made them to rethink. Alas, things in most cases, largely, are still the way it is. Because when we talk about this, we only talk on a large scale, state level, federal level. What about the local government level, where over 70% of Nigerians lives? It's a fact. Nigeria is more of a rural nation. You only have, like in some states, like 3 local governments will be urban, you understand? 4, 2 in some cases. And then you have the others largely like dwellers. But when you go there and look at the state of health, my brother, you ask yourself, what actually are we thinking?
All right. I'm sure Professor Uzodike has something to say, but I'll ask a question in addition to that. From the point he has raised, it does appear that is this the reason why there's a lot of myth around whether COVID-19 is real or not in Nigeria, because there isn't a spark of a brilliant spark from the health sector, because you see discordant tunes between the politicians and the health sector. The doctors are threatening to go on strike. All the people who work around the health sector are threatening either one strike or the other, or demanding for one thing or the other. And then someone who is an onlooker listens to some people in government talking about donations from wealthy individuals and companies, and then at the middle of it will be the Nigerian people who think that this is getting out of hand, that it does appear there is no COVID-19. Talk to us about how we can bust this myth to point people to the direction where we understand that this is real and we have to behave in a certain way to escape.
Thank you again. Useful question. But let me pivot slightly and again bring up the issue around around the question of science versus other disciplines. What I actually said was that science people are doing better. It doesn't mean that they are excelling, that they're doing better. You know, if you look at their ability to actually work with others who are not here, who have resources and whose resources that they use, there are quite a few scientists in this country that are doing useful research. The question is, how relevant is their research to what we are doing? Frequently it's not, because it's funded elsewhere with their own needs, and they slot into those kinds of arrangements, those networks, and they work within that particular framework. If we don't invest in our own needs, we will not get much out of it. It's really at the heart of it. So you can be an excellent academic, but how relevant is your work to your own context? We have a context. Our context is not the same as most other countries' context. In fact, if you look at Nigeria's profile, it's a bit different from most of others, including here in Africa. So we need to have investments in our system. Now, in terms of this issue of disbelief on the part of many people within our country. For me, it's embedded in the distrust that we have for those in office, political office. We know that people are using the pandemic, at least it's been raised, I don't know personally, but it's been raised, that we are inflating numbers, we are creating scenarios where people are, I've heard, I don't know how true, that people are actually volunteering or volunteering themselves, claiming that they are not well, so that they can actually be isolated somewhere, fed, and so on and so forth. I don't know how that works. And then there are some individuals.
But really, Prof, is it hard to imagine that people want to be isolated and fed?
Well, but that's what's feeding it. You know, yes, people are finding it difficult to not believe that these things are actually happening. You know, but where numbers are being inflated, where some states are understating their own issues for whatever reasons, or overstating their problems for whatever reasons that they've got, Nigerians, basically, you read this, and then I've heard reasonable people question whether or not there is, in fact, a serious problem in the country. Nigeria still is one of the mildly affected countries when you look at the scheme of things. But what we do know is that the numbers are getting worse on a steady basis. It's getting worse. I think we are now around 38,000 infected people. If we had more test kits, I suspect that the numbers will be much higher than that. I suspect. But there are those who don't believe that we even have a problem in the first instance. And you see this playing out in wherever you go. I think it has to do with the fact that our leaders are not trustworthy. Most people don't believe that they are trustworthy. And we are not seeing the kinds of investment. Many of these leaders actually get substantial amounts of money as whether you call it constituency votes or security votes or whatever. These are huge amounts of money, and frequently very little by way of actually accounting for how these monies have been spent. And I don't know why we would have that sort of system, and when we need it to actually work, because you can't get into a worse security than the possibility that you can actually get infected with this very deadly virus. Why do we not have a test kit at least in every local government in this country? Why not? At minimum. Because in many places, you really require far more than this. You know, and how do you expect somebody, I don't know where our test kit here in Enugu is, but I suspect in Enugu City. But if you live at Ozowani, you have to make your way here if you're getting a flu for somebody to actually test you. Or the various places that are quite far from this particular city. How does that work? How would that actually ensure that we are getting good health care in this place? So, in essence, from where I see it, I feel as though it's really about trust, that the trust isn't there. Where there was something, it's largely broken. And so we have a system where people simply are finding the gatekeepers very untrustworthy and not to be relied on.
All right, Chukuma from Okenwa, before we get to the phone lines, I'd like to quickly find out from you whether the schools are prepared to get back and running. There are concerns that if the schools open, for instance, that it might well open another window for another level of transmission. And because the argument is one, that young people might not manifest the fact that they have COVID-19, but they have the capacity to spread it among the aged population. They have their parents, their grandparents, granduncles, whoever. That is the main fear. And of course, a lot of the institutions don't have the capacity and the capability to observe social distancing or get into procuring some high-tech gadgets for disinfecting or spraying, whatever it is called. So do you think that there is some hope that schools can reopen soon enough, or is this the main problem holding the schools from reopening?
Of course, you know, institutions and schools is an integral part of the society. And the society in all its entirety has been opened up. Of course, the children have been part of the various phases, you know, of the ease of the lockdown at the moment. Whether you talk about like for religious places, you understand, where also like the children could have their class, interact with the adults. And one of the things also endangers that this lockdown on schools have even exposed to the kids. If you go to Obueta now, you see children hawking. You understand? Because like some parents saw it all due to the hardship. Now that they are around, at least come and help and make the school fees so that once school starts, you can also like, you know, we are sure your school fees is ready. So children are exposed notwithstanding. We've also have like rising cases of child abuse, you understand? Because they are just home and stuff like that. Some of them also, children sometimes could be mischievous. Because as parents must certainly have to leave the home to make ends meet. And then who do you leave the kids back home with? Are you really sure of those persons and all the rest? So it's been argued, there has been that argument on global stage that school still remains the safest place to keep kids. What we now expect like relevant stakeholders in the educational sector is to follow like the precautions, you understand? Follow all the steps that are laid out and all the rest, you understand? Since other sectors are also allowed. I am sure it will not mean more danger because like if you take a cue of like places where, let me use the word, it's been experimented, schools reopen, it's clearly observed that the reopening of the school did not in any way impact on the numbers.
It did in
You
Ghana.
understand?
It did in
in
Ghana.
the case, like in the case of, you understand, like particularly Taiwan, you understand? You know, they reopened school. Taiwan, you know, they just shut down school only for 2 weeks. Are you aware of that? And schools has been on and all the rest. So what I'm trying to say is that like we'll take a cue from nations that have made like success in that regard. We'll be able to find out what exactly are they doing. And then also like in terms of testing capacity, Nigeria should draw inspiration. I think it was Senegal that came up with a $1 solution test material for assessing COVID instead of like the amount of dollars that you spend just to get one person tested, which is not feasible. And one of the major things, because like apart from the doubt, like the doubt that many people have, which largely come from the distrust from the politician, but majority of it also come from the medical sector. Because at the moment as we speak, CDC in America and also NCDC in Nigeria work with what we call like the guidelines. Guidelines, you don't assess people based on diagnostic, laboratory tests, understand, but based on clinical grounds. You look out for the symptoms, and based on the checklist, you can confirm if the person is COVID-19 or not. But when we begin to look at like empirical facts, you understand, looking at the laboratory and all the rest, that's what is expected for a serious virus as COVID-19. To be able to say this person have COVID-19, we've seen videos, maybe sometimes they come to carry somebody and the person is like, I'm COVID-19 free, you understand, I don't have it, and it's like, you have it, you must get there and all the rest. So, but when we begin to like say, okay, we assess this in the lab, and I think it becomes clearer. Even to the blind.
This is Political Voices on 92.5 Enugu's Dream FM this morning. We're taking a look at the COVID-19, the opportunities for education and development in Nigeria. We're looking at the issues this morning. I'm joined by Professor Ufu Okeke-Uzodike, Executive Director, Afri Heritage Institution. And also in the studio is Chukuma Ifrem Okenwa. He is the Executive Director, Lead Network. You can be part of the program this morning. In case you are not within our terrestrial area, you can join our dual cast on social media. On YouTube, you can watch us live on our YouTube channel, Dream TV Enugu. Remember to subscribe and turn on notification. And you can drop your comments there too. And on Facebook, it's 925 Dream FM. You can drop your comments. There will have tons of comments already on Facebook. And you can send your WhatsApp message to 0902 0020925. Or you can call the studio lines. I'm about to open it up now. You can call the studio line 0809 00. I should say 0809 8888 Hello. Good morning. Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
What's your name and location?
This is Oli Amaika. I'm calling from a club then.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Alex, our government are not trying for us to. They're only telling us who is looting money. They don't want to have a paying future for the young ones. Every day they're telling us that some people loot 30 billion naira. Why not them use that money to make preparation so that school can start? Other countries, school have already started. We in Nigeria, we are just playing. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you so much. And on Facebook, 925 Dream FM, Cyprian Nicodemus Mwebu says, I want to tell us that before the outbreak of COVID-19, Nigeria leaders, sorry about that. He said before the outbreak of COVID-19, Nigeria leaders and some educational stakeholders have killed education in Nigeria. Of course, you can see that before the outbreak of the pandemic, ASU have already embarked on industrial action. All right, and Maxwell Everestus Ekene says, good morning, Alex. The coronavirus has stolen the opportunities for students in Nigeria because our leaders supported it. And Edward Ede says he's watching us from 82 Division, Nigerian Army here. Good morning, Alex. There is a huge advantage in revamping our educational sector through the expose brought upon by coronavirus, giving us some lessons. Chineke Kajetan says, greetings, the guest in the studio. This is Ambassador Chineke Kajetan from Enugu. Looking at the educational sector over time, Nigeria never pays attention to achieving a quality education as one of those things that should happen. All right, Ovuna Dickland, I'll get back to your own message quickly. Let's take a phone call. Hello. Good morning.
Hello, good morning.
What's your name and location?
I'm calling from Nsukka, Festus somewhere.
You're welcome, Festus.
Okay. Greeting to the analysts in the building. Please, I want to categorically take it this way. Let us believe that Nigeria hates education. It's better we just understand it that way, because looking at it as it stands now, even the Minister of Education, the entire government officials, they don't even give us what it takes to resume school. We are just believing on the measure that have been set at initio when this pandemic initially surfaced. What are we expecting and what are we going to do? That is the question we need to think about. You see, even 2021 has been assumed that we are going to go back to school. What are the measures? What are the means by which we can at least take to resume school? All these things are not discussed and are not put in place. We are just assuming by 2021 to resume or before that.
Okay,
but there is no measure, accredited measure for us to be even safe supposed.
Thank you, Samuel. We'll take a message from Facebook, 925 Dream FM. Ravuna Dickland from Aliki Ikwene, Boyne State says, let me commend you and the guests in the studio for the analysis so far. And I wish to ask if it is possible to restructure our educational system in this period. Nigeria is almost facing inflation, corruption, and constant borrowing of money from the Western world. Meanwhile, I hope Mr. Kenwa Prof will highlight more on the way out. Thank you for being there. And all right, we'll take there is some messages, but we'll take some more phone calls. Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning.
What's your name and location?
This is David Henry Bonda. I'm calling from Enugu.
You're welcome.
You see, unless this topic is very, very dicey, I have to say, Nigeria and education and attention to education. Now, Nigerians are waiting for coronavirus to go before school will reopen. Are we talking about school reopening, or we are trying to stifle Nigerians so that we will reduce the number of graduates to avoid employment, and people are graduating without employment? So people are not employable. Then there is no measure. We are not talking about mosques and churches have already opened. And the way people are not even much articulate, like one of the analysts said, that the children have their classes, their various classes where they were staying, and they interact as children, and they also interact with their parents. Now we are not talking about the infection through the student interaction with the social behavior and the closeness they have with their parents. While we are now talking about closing the school, there is no measure so far being made, provided as Nigeria, as people, to see if we can even provide hand sanitizers in different schools, and one student not to even maintain social distancing, and also continue their ways of life, and education should continue. Look at what is happening. Amount of teenage pregnancy we are going to witness, or we have witnessed so far in this country, and the children have even looked beyond education. Nobody's even thinking about reading again. Because everybody have gone to street. Nigeria have started living their normal life. I have to tell you, the reason why the people or the government have not been able to even open the school is that their children abroad are not in school.
Henry.
So there is no way they are going to reopen Nigerian schools.
Henry,
look at the current between Minister of State Education and Minister of Education.
Thank you, Henry.
That will tell you that they are not serious to open school.
Thank you, Henry, for your thoughts. Sometimes it becomes difficult to stop Henry when he starts. And on YouTube, our YouTube channel, Ifeanyi Dam is posting lots of messages. He's talking to us from United Arab Emirates. He says, thank you for the topic. You guys are doing a wonderful job. And he says, let's tell ourselves the truth. The scientists are not doing a good job in our country. Science is all about practical, not theory. Our educational system is not getting it right in terms of science. And let's take some more phone calls. Hello, good morning. All right then. Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning.
What's the name and location?
Yeah, this is Abohin Richard calling from Renaissance University, Walker in State.
You're welcome.
All right. I want to state clearly that any nation that relegates its education to the background is doomed to fail. If you look clearly, you discover that every sector in the country has been open except the educational sector. And this is like the biggest industry within the country. And of course, if you look at it clearly, you discover that it is because, should I call it, with all due respect, selflessness of our leaders, because they don't consider education important. Now, if you can open schools and, open the church and business areas, does this mean that education cannot function? Other meaningful economies in the world have tried to open up education, started schooling, and of course, they never thought it wise to close down schools for a very long time. Yet here we have considered school as the only home for coronavirus.
All right. Try and keep it as short as possible. Thank you for your call. And of course, I think we'll have time for one more call or maybe one more text message. Seibofa Mr. Me is saying, good morning, Alex. Nigeria has consistently over the years neglected the educational sector. COVID-19 made it even worse. The way out is to fund the education sector like never before. On tweet on, I should say, WhatsApp, Celestine Eme from Umpu in Aneri local government says, government is playing politics with COVID-19. Yes, because we live with and manage HIV/AIDS, Ebola, typhoid fever, and the rest of it. Why can't we manage this one? Instead, government is promoting the effects by telling us that anyone that dies of COVID-19, while we have natural death before COVID-19. Let the government reopen schools. Thanks. So we'll come back to the studio now. Professor Ufo Okeke-Ozadike, there must be a way we can get things rolling again in the country. It's not enough for us to say, okay, because there are lots of dangers here and there that we can reopen. There are places that things are kicking up. What are those things they are doing that we can borrow and emulate and implement here in Nigeria?
I think at the heart of it really has been a tendency in countries that have their acts together to make sure that they have a sense of the infection rate. Who is affected by these issues, and to what extent are we ready in any given situation, should it arise, to be able to actually intervene quickly and effectively? We don't have that capacity in Nigeria. There is very little by way of capacity. If you go ahead and simply open without actually having a sense of how bad the situation is in your particular context, there's a chance we're going to have a major problem. I'm still not sure that we have a sense of how badly affected the country is. For me, that is at the heart of the problem. If you can get a sense of this, it becomes easier to know how to manage opening. The opening is not about rushing to open. It's about if there are issues. We've seen this in the case of the United States, where individual states took a decision to open quickly without actually putting in place the resources that actually would be needed to identify problems when they're beginning to pick up, and then to intervene effectively to ensure that the pandemic doesn't actually become a disaster. Many states in the United States, right now, something close to a majority of the states have had a spike. The spike has led to increasing levels of hospitalization and the possibility that the death rates will actually begin to go up substantially in the next few weeks. Nigeria, we were already having a bad, in fact a horrible healthcare system to start with. How will we cope if there is a spike in our system? That's the concern one has. So yes, children are basically wasting away, or not just children, even young adults are wasting away because of the closure. But rushing will not necessarily resolve the problem. And so I think there is a need to invest substantially on this particular matter. There should be an opening, but it's not about just simply opening for the sake of opening. It has to be informed opening. One of the things that has actually become very clear, adults right now don't respect social distancing. It's not happening in this country. Go to Obeta, you see it. Go to any market, you see it. Outside of some of the big shops like ShopRite. But even there, once in, basically anything goes. People don't even wear this. Many people don't wear their face cap and so on and so forth. So face mask. Now, for children, I've seen instances where this actually has happened, where we bring them together at churches, we bring them together in various other places where they meet with no protection gear given to them. Now, you compare this to a place like South Africa, where in spite of the efforts made from the beginning, because they even had tunnels for disinfectants, where initially at the point where they were reopening, within a few weeks, many of the schools folded those things up. The net effect right now in places like Pietermaritzburg and Durban and parts of Johannesburg is that there is a spike in the schools themselves, where teachers are getting infected and some of the students are getting infected. So it's not as simple, and they even tried. I'm not sure what we are planning to do in our own cases. What are the plans being put in place? So if institutions in countries that actually are trying are doing badly with this, I really, really shudder to think about what we might have if there are infections in some of the systems that we've got.
All right then. Chukwuma, what changes would you like to see in Nigeria in terms of our preparedness to reopen the educational institutions?
First is there has to be that thorough assessment of the situation like Prof recommended, which we've not been able to do, because there's a difference between waiting and wasting. When you are waiting, you are doing something while waiting to improve your condition. But when you are wasting, you are just waiting for things on its own to improve itself. You understand? Which I've not seen in our own case. But one of the things, some level of independence I expect African stakeholders to begin to look at. When Melinda Gates predicted that in April, over 60 million Africans are expected to be littered on the ground, arising from COVID-19. And that never happened. A fresh date was also predicted, maybe somewhere at the middle of July. I ought to have expected our people to sit down and ask ourselves, why was it like that? There are, when, great minds like that make predictions, you understand, based on maybe they probably have assessed the current healthcare sector, find there is nothing to write home about, and the fact also that probably we may not have all the capacity to keep buying all the test kits. But In some cases, in fact, when that we began to like hear report, it was like more or less like old people and then underlying infections. You understand? That was the simultaneous languages we kept on hearing. So we ought to have also like be able to like assess clearly the situation, move from just like assessing people at the moment now based on just a checklist. You understand? To actually like creating a local solution to be able to check. And then one thing I don't want us to forget as a people. There is what we call immunity. It is built in us. You understand? And one very interesting thing about this virus that have also made some people to wonder, since it's something that in some cases you can even recover from, not knowing you had it, you can even recover from without drugs, you know, why is it now so much celebrated than things like hepatitis B, which at the moment has no cure, you understand? Things like HIV, things like Ebola and all the rest. Why the celebration? You understand? Considering the fact that your body's immunity naturally could even overwhelm the situation provided your immunity is tough. So one thing that we are not understanding now is, should the concern be on boosting people's immunity? Because also naturally the way our immunity works, just like in the case of virus like chickenpox and all the rest, is that exposure also, you understand, could also help recovery. So, but then this is called a novel virus. It's maybe seen that probably we've not known everything about it, but then beyond that, the academics, those in the academia, should be able to like do a thorough assessment of both the virus and then also the human immunity as it has to do with in our own present circumstance.
All right, Professor Zodike, in a less than a minute and a half, I would like you to talk to us about whether we can accomplish all these things we are projecting without the political will.
We can't. The political will is very, very important because that's part of what's going to fund some of the things that we need to do. He raised some issues that I thought were quite interesting in terms of the building of immunity. You can't build it from nothing. We need to. It would be fantastic if we can, but we will need studies to be done and done quickly, and we need to actually have systems in place to help in trying to get this done. Now, you say I have a minute and a half. Can I have 10 seconds? The issue of the issue on the table now, it's something that we're dealing with today, this afternoon, at African Heritage Institution. We've got Professor Greg Ibe coming in to talk, where he's based in, he's currently in New York, but he will be coming to us through Zoom to talk about these issues. So people are welcome to tune in. Well, they need to actually write to us, and they can tune in via their internet. All right, if they wish.
Okay, then, very quickly, in 30 seconds, Chukwumai from Okenwa, your final thoughts?
Yeah, my final thoughts is we'll overcome. Let the government use this time gap to improve on the lot of education. It's not just enough to go to school. It is enough to be educated. It is possible to be schooled without being educated.
Thank you so much. Chukwumai from Okenwa, Executive Director, Lead Network. He's also a proprietor of a school. And Professor Ufo Okeke Uzodike, Executive Director, Afro Heritage Institution. Thank you.
Thank you
as
very
always, for your input on the program. And of course, special thanks to my production assistant, Lotana Okereke, and my producer, Oke Odogu. Remember, if you missed this edition of Political Voices, don't worry. Go to our YouTube channel and you can watch this particular edition. You can even download it from tomorrow. It's possible. And of course, my name is Alex Obodo. Stay tuned for the Dream FM News at 10. Good morning.
Onye batawa o
nna bụ sọ gị nọ n'ụlọ ụmụaka gị kwanu
nwanne m ihe ụmụaka m na-alụzikwa n'oge ugbu a bụ naanị inene bọọlụ, izu okwe nakwa ịpị naanị ekwentị.